Hi, welcome everyone to Going D1 Real Recruiting Stories, a podcast by Joel Groen and friends. Welcome to it. We're hoping to give you lots of different stories about different sports and different journeys getting to a D1 athletic program.
There you go.
My first guest is my son, Gunnar Groen. He was a D1 baseball player at Pepperdine University in Southern California. And we're excited to hear his journey. It was rather circuitous. So
Yeah,
welcome, Gunnar.
Appreciate it. I know I was a tough guest to get. So yeah, it's an honor to be here.
I thought, what better way to start than have someone that's had to put up with me for a long time and gone through the process. So tell us, Gunnar, where you are now and where did you go to college and where did you grow up? So if you don't mind, getting us started on that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I was I've kind of lived all over the place. I was born in London, England. Lived there for a year. Then I lived in Germany, in Frankfurt, for 2 years until I was 3 years old, and then spent most of my time growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut. Lived there for about 14, 15 years until I was 17 years old, and then I finished my high school career in Austin, Texas. And then from high school, I went to Pepperdine University, played baseball there for 4 years, and I am currently in AA with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. So, Gunnar, you've had, I guess, what some would say, tremendous success in your baseball career. Was it something that you expected to happen? Did you have that belief when you were a little kid? Are you where you anticipated?
Yeah. To be honest, I guess I could say it. I guess I could say it in this way, but I feel like I am a lot closer to what I dreamed about than I am to what I expected. I didn't. When I was younger and kind of growing up, and as I got older, I wasn't expecting necessarily a whole lot of success for myself, and then. But at the same time, it was, playing in the major leagues is something that I've dreamed about since as young as I can remember. So I feel like I have definitely sort of surpassed my expectations for myself, and gotten a lot closer to my dream than I necessarily would have expected to.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about where you were in grade school and growing up. Were you, perennial all-star? Were you bigger, stronger, faster? What was early years like?
I felt like the early years were they were, I don't know. I remember a lot more. I remember a lot more struggle than I do success. And I think that's kind of been the story throughout my whole baseball career. I think that's just kind of my personality, is that I want to be as close to perfect as possible. And when you think that way, you kind of remember a lot more of the mistakes you made rather than the successes you had. And so when I was little, I remember being told from, I think, you and Mom, that like I got drafted in some Babe Ruth league, like second overall, or yeah, I don't know. I don't remember if it was second or third or what, but
when you were 13, you were drafted number 1, but I didn't find that out until like 3 years later, when one of the coaches told one of my buddies told me, "Oh, you didn't know?" And I'm like, "No, nobody told me."
So
anyways,
I mean, that's one thing I remember. but I remember kind of having years where I felt like I had played well and then not being like all-star, not being MVP, like all the sort of like titles and accolades that go with youth baseball. Like I don't really remember being a part of any of those. I never went to the Little League World Series or anything like that. Like I was never on a dominant like youth team. I was just kind of I was on teams that I enjoyed playing on. I had friends on the teams, and yeah, that was kind of my experience with youth baseball. Was it was a lot of fun. I love playing baseball, but it was never like kind of do or die in terms of competitiveness and going out and winning games.
Right, right. I would say that growing up, you were on, average travel teams, and you were never received many accolades from any of the coaches because it was, daddy ball
Right.
Until high school.
Mm-hmm.
And even in high school, I think there was
Yeah, high
somewhat
school
of
was
that
really good
too.
in Connecticut.
Sorry.
The Greenwich High School was it was really odd in terms of athletics and especially baseball in Connecticut.
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess, how do you feel if you had to explain or use one word for, early, I guess, early grade school baseball, what would you describe it as?
Um, I would just say it would fall under fun. Like it was it was fun. I realized that like I really liked playing baseball. I really loved playing the infield. I loved pitching, and I yeah that was it. I realized that it was fun and that I really enjoyed playing baseball and especially defense.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Um, so around eighth grade, freshman year of high school, you were introduced to the Texas Baseball Ranch.
Mhm.
Is that what he calls it?
Yeah, yeah.
And tell me a little bit about, you know, well, my perception is that you went from understanding where you were locally and having fun to, hey, there's a much more competitive scale of sports in Texas and potentially around the country. So tell me a little bit about that experience and how maybe that shaped your view of baseball, if at
Yeah,
all.
I think that overall the experience was great because it was really awesome to be able to like look at a video analysis for the first time, which has since then become a sort of a pillar of my training is analyzing video. It was also really great to get to sort of be exposed for the first time to like hard uh, or like intense strength training. Like there was all sorts of strength and conditioning things that we would do. Um, and then on top of that, like all of the mechanical and velocity and all different facets of pitching, the drills that they had at the Texas Baseball Ranch were they were great, and it was it was the first place where I think I learned two things. I would say that I learned two things for the first time there. The first one being what it means to work hard at baseball, because before then I didn't. I had no concept of what it meant to work at baseball and to work hard and to be disciplined and accountable and all of those things that are completely necessary. I learned that for the first time just because of how difficult it was. Like, I mean, it was we were inside of like a metal barn in Houston, and it was like 100. It was 100 degrees out, and it was humid, and it was really difficult physically. But I saw what it was to work hard, especially sort of in those conditions. And then I feel like the second thing that I learned there for the first time was sort of how to compete with others, but more importantly, like how to compete with myself. Because when we were doing velocity based drills where you're trying to throw the ball as hard as you possibly can into a net, and you see like a number flash up on the screen, it was the first time that I felt like, oh, I want to go beat that number now. I want to go throw harder than I did the last time. Or this guy looks like, maybe he's a similar body type to me, different or a similar age. I want to go beat the number that he's got. And so it was the first place where I sort of learned hard work, and the first place where I learned competitiveness, and most importantly, competitiveness with myself and my current abilities.
Right, right. Okay. And after that experience, when you went back to Connecticut, what was, what were you able to take away from it? Because obviously that's a highly competitive environment. There's a lot of technology that you can use, and there's a whole new kind of game plan for training. What do you feel like you were able to take from that?
I think the biggest thing that I was able to take from that was basically like a training regimen. It felt like or as far as I can remember, that was the first time where I had a specific plan for what my training was going to be, and I got back to Connecticut, and I was able to actually have the desire and the willingness to execute the plan and to follow it and to stick with it as long as I could. Because I mean, I guess the main thing that was addressed at the baseball ranch was sort of mechanical deficiencies as a pitcher, where your body's going wrong and how you can fix that. And the way they presented it to us was, if these things are going wrong right now and they stay going wrong, or if they keep going wrong for an extended period of time, then you're more likely to get injured. And that's something that I've been trying to avoid. And as a pitcher, that's one of your main jobs, is to stay healthy. And so when I got back home, I really wanted to stay healthy, stay uninjured, and stay available for the teams that I was a part of. And so I thought it was really important to follow those training regimens, do the required number of throws for the required number of days in order to fix my mechanics.
So you would say you learned mechanical deficiency identification, maybe, and then potentially how to train effectively from that process. So would you say that when you returned, you were able to implement those easily and year round, or was it more of
you're saying when I was in Connecticut?
Yes.
Yeah, no, obviously they're very different climates, and I had quite an experience that winter when I was trying to keep training in Connecticut, and it was snowing and it was freezing cold, and there were lots of obstacles. And I mean, I remember, I guess it kind of points to me having learned how to work hard and be disciplined with a training regimen. That I was outside a couple times in Connecticut when there was a few inches of snow on the ground. And I remember one time I took like a step ladder out there, and then I put like a recycling bin in front of the step ladder, and then I attached a bucket to it somehow, and I was trying to like give myself a target or something to throw into so that the balls could end up in a dry place and they wouldn't get soaked by the snow. And then I realized after a couple of days that it was just quite simply not feasible, because it was impossible to keep the balls dry, and also it's impossible to try to throw effectively when you're standing on snow. So there were a few obstacles with that one, with throwing outside. So then I think after that I shifted to clearing out like a lane that was maybe like 20 feet long in our garage, and I'd set up. I went through a few different materials, but I put up like a piece of plywood against the back wall, and I think that lasted me. I think that lasted me a few throws, and then there was a and there was a hole in the plywood, and so then I realized that that wasn't going to work. So then I put a mattress behind the plywood and flipped the plywood over so there was a fresh spot, and then punched some holes in the plywood again, and then I think at that point I started to just throw at the mattress, and I don't know. It was really it was it was quite an experience trying to
Yeah.
outside of a facility in Connecticut in the winter. Um, but it was, I think that was definitely a formational season where I learned kind of what it meant to commit to a process and commit to a training regimen and commit to getting better and commit to lots of things in terms of doing work by myself without people telling me what to do or sort of outside influences holding me accountable. And I really learned self-discipline and accountability and work ethic during that time, and then actually for a few years after that as well. But we'll get to that.
So basically, do you think so? One of the things I've, as a parent and watching this whole process, I felt that it was either you needed to be in a warm climate or you needed to have daily access to a facility, that indoor facility that could help you to throw daily. And would you say that that's fairly accurate, or do you think
Yeah, no.
there's
Sorry, go ahead.
That's it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's completely accurate. Yeah, it definitely. I definitely felt like those are really the only two options if you want to train at a high level. I think obviously the lower the level is, the less the less of a perfect or ideal environment is required. But I was I was at a time where I was making lots of progress towards being a competitive high school pitcher. So I definitely did need one of those two things.
Right. Okay. And so, just from a parenting perspective, we were kind of at a point where I felt like for you and your brothers to develop to be D1 athletes, I didn't think we could do it in Connecticut personally. And so we actually, made the decision to move to Texas, as parents and trying to provide a great opportunity for you and your brother to play football. And for me, one of the biggest reasons for that was training, and a secondary reason was exposure. So, we had talked to different people about, the exposure and different I guess showcases, actually, now that I think about it, for baseball, and also how do you get exposure for football, because your brother was a football player or is a football player. And so we moved to Texas, potentially trying to gain I guess skill, work, and exposure for you. You were developmentally way behind as a sophomore in high school, and you felt like you were trying to compete with guys that were fully developed and throwing 90 miles an hour, and you were, as a pitcher, and you were not there.
Yeah.
Sorry?
As an athlete in general, I would say I wasn't there.
So so we moved to Texas, and you were able to start training year round, what kind of happened to you in terms of your development, your skill, and what was your experience with that part of the shift
Yeah.
or move?
I think that, and I mean, I still talk to pitchers who I'm playing with in the D-backs now, and all around professional baseball. But like lots of people I've talked to who have asked me about my story and all that. I still sort of give a lot of credit to the first summer when we got to Austin, because we got there in, well, what month did we get there? Like April, May?
One of those, April. It must have been earlier, April.
Yeah. So I mean, we got there in April. I found out that basically a few of my classes from Connecticut weren't going to transfer over to high school in Texas, and so basically they said you can either knock out all three of these full year classes in 1 year, or you can split it over 2 years. And it was like biology, chemistry, and physics, and I wanted to have a good GPA and like class rank and all of that, so I wanted to take like honors biology, honors chemistry, AP physics, and there was just no way I was going to do all three of those in 1 year. So I did anyways. I had to repeat my junior year, so I had from when we got to Texas until when school started in late August, early September, to figure out how to develop myself into a player that could play on a Texas high school baseball team in one of the major cities in the state of Texas, which is obviously one of the top, I would say, 3 states in America for all athletics, I guess, in high school. And so that summer, I basically just told myself that I was going to long toss pretty much every day. And so every day I introduced myself to the coach of the high school team. I was like, hey, I'm going to be a student here next year. Is it cool if I use the baseball field when you guys aren't having practice? He was like, yeah, of course. Great to meet you all. It was all good. And so I long tossed pretty much every day. And the days that I didn't long toss, I would be doing weighted ball throws into nets. And I had a little notebook that had like, it had like a graph of all of the listed, it had a graph of everything that was all the exercises that I was doing, and what my previous bests were, and what my current one was. So that was where sort of competing with myself came into play. And so I was able to sort of do my own velocity training, keep track of everything, had a little mini radar gun, and was doing long toss all the time. So it was a very important summer for my development.
So you were tracking your progress, and you were long tossing, and you were probably putting in, I don't know, I'm guessing 2 to 3 hours a day, kind of working at throwing.
Probably around that, yeah.
Okay. And
I would say 2 hours at the top end, because
right, you can't throw forever.
Exactly. You and I have discussed this. I can't throw forever through the basketball.
Right. Okay, so you basically felt like going into the next season, you were prepared to play at I think it was 6A school, Westlake, which is the largest school division in Texas. So, and Texas is a little different than California, because public schools are the most competitive, and they're not able to recruit for the most part. You might have a few transfers, but it's not a system like California where people are recruited. So So essentially, in that summer, you progressed, and then tell us a little bit about their season, and also tell us a little bit about your next season, your junior season.
Yeah, my my junior season was honestly pretty intimidating, just because I was going into sort of uncharted territories, and I didn't know how my teammates would be. I didn't know how the competition would be. I didn't know really anything about what was going to happen. But my junior season, I pitched pretty much. I think I pitched like all of my outings were out of the bullpen. I started actually, yeah, that's right. I started one.
You didn't.
Lake Travis, yeah. Did I start any other games? Do you know?
I think you had two starts. One of them was Lake Travis, who was
Yeah.
number 5 in the state or something at the time.
I remember I started against Lake Travis, but mostly I was out of the bullpen. I remember honestly, I remember not a whole lot from that season. I think overall it went pretty well, but it was the kind of thing where I was a junior in high school, but I was a year older, so I was a senior's age playing in high school. But uh, what it really what it really felt like was kind of that my was kind of that the work that I had done in that summer leading up to it had felt like it had paid off, because um, I just found that the way I was pitching and the stuff that I had was good enough to compete with the best teams in our conference, like Lake Travis, who's got, I think that Lake Travis team we played they have at least one guy playing in the big leagues right now. They might have they might have more than that, but I don't remember. But I do remember that I felt like I had made enough progress that what I had was more than good enough to compete at that level, which was a good feeling.
And tell me, so uh, probably in January or February, we signed you up for this team called Wings Black. And tell me,
You signed me up for wings, and then I had a tryout to see which color wings team I would be on.
oh, is that right? Okay,
Yeah.
so go ahead. So we signed up for Wings.
Yeah, because the tryout
and
was
then
in February. I remember the tryout was in February, and it was like 35 degrees outside. And I remember I showed up to the field where I was going to try out, and like everyone had already started trying out, and the pitching coach was off to the side, and I was like, "Oh hi, I'm Gunnar, I'm trying out," and he just had me throw like a bullpen on the side, and I showed up and I had like a hoodie on, and then it was time to start throwing, and so I just like took my hoodie off and I had like a workout t-shirt on, and he was like, are you sure you don't want to throw with your hoodie? And I was like, no, like I'm not going to pitch with a hoodie on. And he was like, and like you're not freezing? And I was like, I'll be fine. And so yeah, then I threw like threw like 10 pitches, and he was like, all right, like that, I mean, it looks great, thanks for coming, and like we'll be in touch with you about what team. And I was like, oh, that was quick and easy. Yeah, the whole thing took like 10 minutes max.
right. And so tell me about that team, because I find that team was pretty interesting in my perspective.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
It was the team was really good. It was actually not probably, it was like definitely the best baseball team that I had been a part of up to that point. And yeah, our team was honestly just really solid all around. We had 3 really good outfielders that would be above average or outstanding at their position, and then we had really good middle infielders. We had one really good catcher, and it was a lot of fun to play on that team, because it was a time where I was able to really trust the defense behind me, and it helped me out a lot mentally when I was pitching, because I could shift my thinking from like I don't want this guy to hit the ball, to thinking, please hit the ball somewhere. Like someone's going to make an out, just hit the ball, put it in play, and we'll have an out. And Yeah, Sandy Koufax has a quote about that actually, where he said, "I became a much better pitcher when I stopped trying to make guys miss and I started trying to make them hit the ball." So that was that it was really nice to feel that and to be able to trust the defense, and then yeah, a lot of that team ended up the next year at Angelo State University in San Angelo, Texas. So that was interesting too. I got an offer from there as well, and most of the guys took it. I ended up not, but you know, that's that was yeah, it was a really great team to be a part of.
Okay. So Wings Black, you were on a team that you said went to a lot of players went to Angelo State. So tell me just 30 seconds or 10 seconds on Angelo State.
Sounds like Angelo State, it's one of the most successful D2 programs in the United States.
Okay. And tell me, so you had an offer from them. We actually visited them. So of your Wings Black teammates, how many guys ended up with either Division I or Division II offers?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know who everybody got offered by, but I know that there were 6 or 7 guys that got offers from Angelo State. Um, as far as I knew, nobody from that team got offered by any of like the big Texas D1 schools like UT or A&M or Texas Tech or TCU. I don't think.
Yeah, Texas A&M offered Jason Ruffcorn.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, I forgot.
Yep. So he was offered A&M. I think I feel like the not covert, but covert related kid went to Oklahoma, but maybe I'm wrong. Or
Okay.
Baylor. He went to Baylor. But anyway, so most of the kids either had Division I or Division II offers. And interestingly, how many pitchers, and I don't know, I haven't tracked the position players. It's a different, whole different category in my mind. So of the pitchers on Wings Black from Austin, Texas, that summer, how many are playing professional baseball?
Roughcorn, me, trying to remember the guys on the team.
Trent Baker.
Baker, he was on the team. Yeah.
So there are three guys in the pros now from that league, from that team.
Yeah, I also don't think that any position players are still playing.
All right, so Wings Black, you got Angelo State offer. I think, I don't know if part of this actually, interestingly, I'll just say from a parenting perspective, it's hard to figure out what these coaches are saying and doing. Yeah. So you don't really, like, until you go through it, I found it very difficult. And oftentimes the coaches on those teams have more insight into what the college coaches are saying, and they're a great resource if it's a good program. Because ultimately, I think you had, kind of a sweet full ride offer from Angelo State, which after we visited and delayed, they basically didn't say you didn't have a full ride or whatever, but they were kind of, less enthusiastic. And then also you had, I don't know if you remember, but the Dartmouth coach basically, offered you a position to some extent as an Ivy League. It's not a scholarship, but it's, a spot. So that was that all happened junior summer. And then, realistically, you didn't want to go to Dartmouth. You didn't want to go to Angelo State. We did kind of have more conversations with them. But ultimately, I think for players and parents, part of the process is you have to be fully committed to whatever school it is. If they show interest and you want it, you got to go immediately and take it, right?
And to add on that, I think it's also it would also be good to mention that I had offers from I kind of had in terms of academics versus athletics, like I had a few offers that hit one and missed the other. So like Angelo State would have been a great opportunity athletically because they basically like they had told me that I would pitch a lot for them basically, and they had really good player development. They had really nice facilities, all that. But like the academics weren't something that I was looking for. And then also there's the factor of like where you're living. So like we visited San Angelo, Texas, and that wasn't where I wanted to live for my college. And then I also had an offer from Emory, which was a Division III in Atlanta, and they told me that like same thing. I would probably be like their number one pitcher if I had gone there. And it's a very intelligent school. Like the academics were super high. The place where it was like in sort of a suburb of Atlanta was super cool, and like I love that. But the athletics were just not quite what I was looking for. And I at the time I felt like if I came in like as a freshman and was their number one guy, then there wouldn't be I was worried that like I wouldn't be pushed to reach my fullest potential, and that I would feel more I would feel a little bit too comfortable being there, instead of feeling like I had something to prove, and sort of having a chip on my shoulder if I'd gone there.
So you kind of evaluated it in two ways, whether it was athletically, but also academically, and what that meant for you going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, you didn't accept any offers, didn't really have a plan yet for college, and you decided to apply to a number of schools, and we decided that we should go to, I would say, really your first showcase, which was Head First in Florida, and it essentially was a high academic Division 1 through 3 baseball showcase. So, tell me a little bit about that. And so this is now senior year, and you're essentially trying to figure out what your best options are. You have a number of different options, but not exactly what you're looking for. We go to Head First. Tell me about that experience and kind of what came out of it.
Head First was it was enjoyable, mostly because I did really well. So it was cool to sort of go to Florida. I mean, like we played at a spring training complex, so like that part of it was cool. But I mean, I remember going, and if you're a pitcher going to a showcase, you have sort of very limited opportunities, because everything is like in the whole showcase, you got to fit everybody who paid to be at that showcase into the showcase. So everybody's reps and opportunity is limited. So I remember I had two outings that were pretty much back to back. Like the first one was at night on day one. It was like a 2-day showcase. It was at night on day one, and I did fantastic. And I was like sitting at 90 miles an hour, pounding the strike zone. And to be completely honest, like I felt like I had gotten really lucky, because I was still at a place in my career where I didn't like, I knew that sometimes the ball would be near the strike zone, but sometimes it wouldn't. And so I just felt like I got really lucky on that day, and that the ball was just right in the strike zone like the whole time. So I was like, okay, that's sick. Like this is great. And then I don't remember if I pitched 1 or 2 innings, but yeah, I think I pitched one. And then the morning of the next day, they had me scheduled for my next outing. And I was like, oh wow, okay, like that's a quick turnaround. And so I showed up the morning of the next day, and I think it was still good. Like it was, I think I was like probably 86 to 88, 89. And I was still around the strike zone. Like I don't think I gave up any runs or anything like that. But to be honest, I don't believe that, like the results of the actual game were what anybody there was looking at. You know, unless you strike everybody out, then like obviously that's hard to ignore. But I remember when I was warming up for that second game, and I was throwing in the bullpen, and like I went down to the bullpen, and there were like 4 or 5 coaches that just kind of like followed and went and stood behind the screen that was behind the catcher, and they had radar guns up, and they were you know, they were watching. And it was a very interesting experience, because up until that point I had been on the other side of that sort of that interaction, where I would see other guys have like scouts or coaches following them, and I would see other guys getting all of the attention and all this other stuff. And so that was the first time where I was kind of like, oh, like this is kind of cool. Like they're actually paying attention to me, rather than, you know, paying attention to the other guy. So yeah, I got a whole bunch of, out of that showcase, I got a whole bunch of small D1 offers from like the Northeast area, really. And so like, yeah, there were a whole bunch of smaller D1s, and then a few D3s as well. But I think the biggest thing to come out of it was the guys who, either the guys who run the showcase or somebody involved in the company that in Headfirst has like a connection to Stanford. And so they told Stanford about my first outing. And so then Stanford had contacted me and said like, hey, we would love for you to come to a showcase out in Palo Alto and see you in person. And so that was definitely the biggest opportunity that came from that showcase.
Right. And I guess in a lot of ways, I guess the one word that I would describe your high school experience is overlooked. You were frequently overlooked, and you did have a lot of offers from people that from schools you weren't necessarily interested in, because I think at the time you really wanted to go to UT and pitch for Texas, and that was kind of your goal or your dream. You know, I would say that when we decided to go to Stanford, and it was interesting. The whole process is confusing, because the communication level between the coaches and the athletes is fragmented at best and cryptic. And so you know, I think there's a lot we could talk about with that, but for the sake of time, how do you feel like the Stanford camp went?
I mean, it was really cool. It was a very cool experience. But it was a very difficult situation in terms of performance, because I mean, whether it was the day, or whether it was the travel before to get there, or, you know, it could have been a million factors, but like I just simply did not pitch well when I went there, and I didn't have there was no game situation that you would pitch in. It was only like a bullpen. So you were only throwing a bullpen in the bullpen. You weren't competing. You weren't facing batters or anything. And I mean, I remember when I threw my bullpen and I was there, and it was like 45 degrees outside, and it was 9:45 in the morning, and they were like, "All right, you're up." And so I got up and I threw my bullpen, and I had no idea how it went, but I assumed it, like, at the time I kind of figured it wasn't great. Number one, because I didn't feel very good physically. Like I felt fine, and like I gave it everything I had, on the day, but I felt fine. And also it was kind of a situation where, like, when we checked into the camp, they knew that we were coming, and like my name was highlighted on some sheet of paper, and we'd met the pitching coach and all this stuff, and like it was like clearly they were looking for me to be there. And then after I threw my bullpen, like the pitching coach just kind of left, and then that was the end of the showcase. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that wasn't very good. And then
Yeah.
and then like a month later, I got an email back with like my report from the camp, and it was like, yeah, you were throwing, like, your velo was 83 to 85, and I was like, okay, well, there you have it. That's not going to do it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. As a parent, it was hard to figure out what was happening, and when you got that report, I guess it became clear. But it's
Yeah, college coaches are never going to tell you anything more than they absolutely have to.
yeah, yeah,
And even sometimes we might not get that.
yeah. So, well, when you got after that experience, then you actually lost your senior season based on Texas athletics ruling. But then you had you had applied to various schools. You had a number of offers. Tell me a little bit about the different offers, and potentially you were on a different team, not Wings Black, but on a different team. Tell me a little bit about that process, and where you were with schools and all that.
Yeah, the other team was definitely productive because the coach he seemed like he was very connected with lots of college coaches. So he would organize for coaches to come. Like I remember I threw for the LSU coach, and like there were all sorts of sort of things that he was able to set up, which were great. And it was really what I needed, since I didn't have a senior like high school team season. And so since I wasn't able to play my senior year, that having a place where I could go to work out, because I was able to use the facility to work out and get my work in. And having a coach who could also help me. That coach was helpful in terms of velocity mainly. Like he helped my velocity sort of sustain, or he helped me sustain my velocity like around the 90-mile-an-hour range. And yeah, and so at that point, all the offers I had were Emory, Angelo State, and I think that
Well,
was
you had
like
you had Lehigh and Lafayette and a couple others, but you had just kind of I think, quite frankly, you had blown off most of the offers at that point, so you're looking for something else.
Yeah, and then while I was in season, quote unquote, because I wasn't actually eligible, but during the season when I was working with that team was when I got the Pepperdine offer, which was a whole story in itself. But yeah, that was very productive in terms of being able to get my work in and getting some exposure.
Right. And quite honestly, I think that coach, well, I would say that you also had offers from Michigan State and I think Wichita State from the coach there. But you were not interested in a northern team. So, as I recall, you really wanted to go to California
Yeah.
once you realized Texas wasn't, UT wasn't going to happen. But as you were received an offer from Pepperdine, it was one of a number of different offers and across different uh, Division 3, 1 through 3, and you had a summer team coach had been very helpful in arranging that among other other bullpens, I guess, for lack of a better term for other
Yeah.
D1 programs. So, tell me a little bit about the Pepperdine offer, and when you got to Pepperdine, how there was quite a bit of variation between different people's recruiting process. So,
Yeah.
just a little bit of maybe your own story, and then
Yeah.
some of the lowest and highest of the recruits, I guess, maybe
Yeah.
would be interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I got involved with Pepperdine, kind of out of out of nowhere. Really, they didn't approach me, but I had applied to Pepperdine. Pepperdine was one of the 5 schools that I'd applied to, and so I applied there. I had gotten in just based on academics alone, and yeah, so I'd gotten in, and then yeah, I was I had at that point I had sent out hundreds of emails to college coaches about who I am, and just sort of expressing my interest and letting them know a little bit about me and what my grades were and all that. And I had an email template that I would copy and paste, and then I would fill in the appropriate name and then replace the appropriate school where I saw fit. And so I sent one of those to Pepperdine, and I emailed them and I added in like, hey, I've already been accepted for the next fall or for this coming fall as a student, but I play baseball. I'm a 6'5", 200-pound right-handed pitcher. And I would love to be part of the program and keep playing. And so, it was kind of wild. I mean, I remember the only time that I've been kicked out of a class. I was in my AP stats class, which was an absolute grind, outside of this. But I was in AP stats, and I had just sent the email like 5 minutes before the start of the class, and then class had started, and I saw that they had already emailed me back, and I started freaking out. I was like I was in class, and I was like I was like looking around like, oh my gosh, like someone actually emailed me back, because nobody responded to all the other emails that I sent to all the other schools. So I was just shocked to get a response, and then I opened it, and it was the head coach, and he was like, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'll have our pitching coach get in contact with you. He should be reaching out in a couple minutes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. And then sure enough, like a couple minutes later, the pitching coach reached out to me, and he emailed me, and he was like, hey, what's your phone number? Would love to talk to you on the phone. And I mean, I was in the middle of class, like freaking out and just like typing on my phone, and my teacher was like, all right, Gunnar, like you're being like, you're disrupting the class. Can you please go out into the hall? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I would be more than happy to go out into the hall. And so I grabbed my phone, walked out into the hall, responded to the email. And then yeah, the pitching coach came back to me, and he was like, okay, great. Thank you. I'll give you a call. And then like later that day, I think between like the end of school and practice starting, he called me and just asked me a bunch of questions about like, my family, brothers, sisters, parents, what sort of what the family situation was. He asked me about baseball, obviously, like pitches, velocity, general velocity, all sorts of stuff. And he asked about academics too, and just kind of like what I thought I would be interested in, how I was doing in high school, and just kind of covered all the bases on a phone call. And that was the most I heard from them until a different coach reached out to me, like maybe a month or so later. I don't really remember how much later it was. I think it was about a month. Another coach said like, "Hey, we have a Texas recruiting trip coming up to go see a catcher in Dallas, but we'd love to see a bullpen in person if you can if that lines up with your throwing schedule." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so thankfully, I was able to do the bullpen and have the Pepperdine coach come to see me at the club facility where I was working out during my senior season. So yeah, so they came to watch. They watched me throw a bullpen for like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, and then yeah, and then I remember after the bullpen, he just told me like he was like yeah, you know, you can definitely come compete for innings, and you know, we've got a spot if you want it. And so I was like, okay, great, thanks. And then that was that, and then I ended up committing to them on May 1st when you had to put down your deposit for wherever you were going to go.
Awesome. Awesome. What a great story. What a great outcome.
Yeah.
And you know, basically that was kind of your first choice of school, just on a school basis. And baseball was, you felt like it was a great opportunity baseball wise.
It was, yeah. Out of uh, out of the ones that I applied to, I think it was the best combination of school and baseball. Yeah. Oh, and then I need to talk about the other people that committed in my class. Um, there was one of them who is from Malibu, so like you know, he's grown up around Pepperdine and is from the area, and he was committed. I think he was committed to Pepperdine from his freshman year of high school. Um, is that correct?
Freshman or sophomore, yeah.
Freshman or sophomore? Okay, yeah. But he was committed like freshman or sophomore year of high school. Showed up to Pepperdine, and he was pitching like he was pitching freshman year and was in games pretty much immediately because you know they've been aware of him and sort of on him for a long time. And then I guess the at the other end of the spectrum, um, there were guys who there were a few guys who showed up kind of the same way I did. Like they had a walk on spot, and yeah, the coaches just said like the coaches had maybe like been at some of their high school games watching other people and had kind of thrown out like a walk on spot, like, hey, if you want to, you know, if you want to come walk on, we've got a spot for you, that kind of thing. So it ranged from people getting offers like late in their senior year, like me and a couple other guys, to guys who were committed from freshman year of high school.
Right. And would you then, and you know, quite honestly, you did such a great job academically that you had lots of flexibility.
Yeah.
Would you say that um, the guys that were committed earlier had a lot more scholarship money, or?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
they definitely had more scholarship money, but that's uh, that's a whole different can of worms in terms of college baseball scholarships, because like getting a lot of scholarship money would be like 50% of tuition or so.
Yeah.
Uh, because you know you have 35 guys on a team and you have 11.7 scholarships to hand out, which is
Yeah.
it's not good, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. And quite honestly, I think your senior year summer team coach was a guy at in Austin, Texas, and he was telling me that the bulk of scholarship money tends to be in either academics or need based, or in other areas, that the actual baseball scholarship money is so thin that they try to use every other possible way to get kids into the schools. Um, and so, you know, quite honestly, I guess most people are trying to get that D1 offer and play at that level, what do you think um, was most beneficial for you?
Mm. I think that like number one, like you said, having good academics opened up a lot of doors for me. And I know it's kind of like, I know it's kind of cliche, and it's not what like, it's not what it's not what kids who are in high school want to hear, but it is the truth. And if I hadn't gotten into Pepperdine as a student, then that opportunity wouldn't have been there. And then furthermore, with Pepperdine, if I hadn't done well enough in high school to get the financial aid that I did for academics, then I wouldn't have been able to go either, because I got a lot of help from the university financially, and it was all academic. Like I never had any baseball scholarship, and since I got the help academically, I was paying for school what honestly what some of the higher percentage scholarship guys on the team were paying as well. So doing that helped out a ton. Just having good grades, being in good classes, taking AP tests, doing all that, and then I think outside of that, honestly, like being, I think it's really important to pick schools that you're interested in that kind of match the level of where you are athletically, and to really try to like develop those relationships or reach out to the coaches. I mean, tons of people like that's a great way to do it. I mean, my girlfriend was she played beach volleyball at USC, and she went to Long Beach City College for her first year in college, and she was reaching out to schools for beach volleyball like as soon as she got there, and that was how she ended up at USC, which she loved. So you got to reach out to coaches. You don't have to, but it's a huge plus if you have good grades, because it just kind of takes one limiting factor away from you. Like you're keeping the barrier to someone taking you on their team. You're making that smaller, and you're just putting less obstacles in your own way if you take care of academics. And then outside of that, just reaching out to coaches, and then third, I would say, like if athletically you're in a spot where you know that you're good enough to play at a particular level, then you can go to showcases too. Like that first showcase was really big for me. I got a bunch of offers from smaller D1s. And to be completely honest, like I feel like throughout my time in college, when I played summer ball with a bunch of D2 and D3 guys, like every single one of them could have played at some D1 school. Like there are so many D1 schools out there that range in all skill levels, and I think that honestly there are D1 opportunities for just about everybody, as long as you're at a certain level.
Right, right. Yeah, it seems like there is potentially more equity and or more balanced talent across the divisions in baseball than there are in other sports. You played with a guy that was played a D3 in Los Angeles, and he ended up getting drafted, right?
Yeah,
I believe
he was really, really good.
Yeah. So I mean, you got to be really good at these other programs, but at the end of the day, there's talent everywhere.
Yes.
And so the most people are kind of focused more on that D1 college experience and everything else. At what point did you start thinking, hey, maybe I could go pro, or was that always part of the dynamic for you, and how was that?
Yeah.
How did that evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like obviously it's something that I'd always dreamed of. And I would say that I kind of first got a sense that I might be able to do that right or during the summer before my junior year, because my freshman and sophomore years were were such a struggle. I pitched like 2 total innings those first 2 years. Couldn't figure out why I wasn't playing. All sorts of stuff that I went through and that I kind of learned about, dealing with coaches and dealing with myself and all that kind of thing. And then um, basically like during my exit meeting at the end of my sophomore year, my coaches told me like, hey, if you want to keep playing, you should start looking somewhere else for next year. And so I said, well, just tell me what you want. Tell me what you want me to do, and I can do it. And just let me come back in the fall and have a couple outings in the fall, and then if it's not good enough, then that's fine. Um, and yeah, so so basically they told me that they wanted me to throw harder. My velo had gone down since I'd gotten to Pepperdine. Um, and they wanted to see it back up towards like the 90 range where I had come in from high school. And so I said, okay, how about they were going to send me to summer ball in Dodge City, Kansas. So I went there for half the summer. And then I said, if you want me to throw harder, how about I do velo training the other half of the summer? And they said, okay, sounds great. And so then I did velo training for the second half of the summer and did velo training for 4 weeks. And then I did a bullpen after 4 weeks of velo training, and I got up to 94 miles an hour. And I had never been above 90 in my life. So it was insane. And I was kind of shocked at the amount of progress that I had made when I didn't even realize that I was making that progress. And then, yeah, and so then as soon as I saw that and I started having more and more bullpens that I was throwing that summer that were 92 to 94, 90 at the very bottom end, I realized like this is kind of crazy. Like that's what like pro pitchers are doing. Like these guys that I'm watching on TV, like some of these starters are throwing 90 to 94. So that was kind of when I had the first sense that I might be good enough to do it.
So basically that experience of actually having the coaches sort of say, hey, you got to get your velo up. And then when you're able to do that to such a, I guess, substantial rate, then your mindset kind of changed from that point forward. Is that what you would say?
Yeah. And it's to add on to that, like that was my mindset like at that point, but it's like the experience of being an athlete is so up and down that like that's your mindset during a certain period of time, and then it might take a huge drop when you have a bad outing at school or something like that. And so it goes up and down and it fluctuates with how your performance is. But that was something that I realized was a possibility after
that. Right. So you went from, hey, I want to play Division I baseball at Pepperdine to, hey, it would be great if I could play pro, keep playing. And so then, I think briefly I would say how did you get from that initial jump in velo to then to double A, because you've had kind of a circuitous route there as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, obviously you want to get drafted. Everybody wants to get drafted. I had a bunch of teams that were interested in drafting me after my junior year and like before my senior season started. And then basically my senior season that year for our school was just bad. We didn't make the playoffs. The whole team wasn't really playing well. It was just kind of bad all around for everybody. And so then after that, I wasn't talking to anyone else anymore. Scouts weren't watching our games. And then eventually during the season, like they just, at Pepperdine, they just started throwing the pitchers that were going to pitch next year after we were out of the playoffs. And so that was tough, and it was kind of indicative of like where the scouts sort of saw me. And so then that summer I went back, did some more velo training and just like pitching training in general. And I got up to 99 miles an hour, showed that to every scout who I talked to, and I was like, hey, look, I threw 99. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, like that's insane, like good job. And then a couple of them were like, hey, when's the next time you're throwing? So, it led to a couple more opportunities before the draft happened. But eventually the draft happened. I didn't get drafted after it had been cut from. This was the year after it got cut from 40 to 20 rounds in 2020, and so this was 2021. So it was the second year of the new 20-round draft.
I think it was even shorter in 2020. I think it was like a 5-round.
Yeah. You're right.
So you had 2 years of guys going into a smaller draft.
Yeah, exactly. And so they drafted less guys, and they cut out a whole bunch of like minor league levels, because there was like the complex league, there was rookie ball somewhere else, there was like a short season league somewhere else, which was a whole different thing. And then there was low A, and then there was high A, and then there was like there were a million different teams, and they'd cut out like 2 or 3 of those steps in each organization. So there were just significantly less minor league jobs available. And so the draft happened. And then thanks to my advisor at the time, I was able to get a spot playing independent ball in the American Association, which is it's an independent league, and it's kind of pretty much like in the Midwest of the U.S. And it's pro, like they pay you to play. I got the rookie like base salary, which was like nothing. But I had a chance to play for this team in Kansas City, so I went out, tried out. They watched the bullpen. They said, good job. And then 2 days later, they signed me, and then I pitched that same day. So it was a whirlwind. And then I pitched that day. I was throwing like 95 to 97, so that was great. My manager was fired up about that. And then so I played with them the rest of that season after the draft happened. And then in the off season that December, I got traded from the team in Kansas City to a team in the Frontier League, which is another independent league. And it's in like the Northeast, to a team in New Jersey. So then I showed up to spring training at this team in New Jersey. I was there for like a week and a half of spring training, and then right before spring training was going to end, the manager was like, "Hey, come to my office." And it was like he texted me that at like 10 p.m. the night before he wanted me to be there. And that day I had like literally the worst outing of my baseball career. Like it was just absolutely miserable. And I was like, all right, well, I'm like, this is it. I'm going to get released before the season even starts. This is good stuff. And so he was like, yeah, hey, can you come to my office before everyone gets to the clubhouse tomorrow morning? I was like, yeah, sure. And so I got there, showed up, and he was like, hey, you know how this guy got signed to the D-backs the other day? And I was like, yep. And he was like on the call with the guy who signed him. He signed him, but he also saw you at a preseason workout that you did. He was like, did you do like a preseason workout for the D-backs in February? And I was like, yeah, I did. Went out there and threw an inning. And he was like, okay, cool. This guy saw you, but he also manages an indie ball team in right outside of Salt Lake City in Utah. And he wanted to get you for and give us one of his infielders. And I was like, okay, like sounds good. And I was just thankful that I wasn't released. And so then he was like, okay, cool. Like, thanks for everything. He'll get in touch. And I was like, okay, great. Thanks. And then and then I ended up going to that team in Salt Lake City. I got there like 3 days later, and then they were just starting their spring training. So I had another 2 weeks of spring training that I did there. And then after that, I was starting for that team. So I made 3 starts, 3 starts in that year. And then after that, the D-backs signed me because that manager was also like the Diamondbacks indie ball scout. So he had, it was a really fortunate place to be because, I had such a great connection with my head coach being part of the D-backs as well. So, that helped out a lot. And then, I've been with the D-backs since then.
Wow. Yeah, it's been a crazy up and down ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure has.
And so, what are your? This is what is your favorite memory? Favorite memory or funniest moment from baseball growing up? Like, are there
growing up?
We have an inside joke about one of them.
Well, yeah, a couple things come to mind from baseball growing up. The first one is when I was playing baseball with our neighbors in our backyard, and they had like a long yard, and there was like a garden at the end of it, which was like right back up against the road. So that was where we would hit. We would hit out that way so that we weren't hitting balls towards the house. And I was just messing around and hitting, and I was out there with my 2 neighbors who were my age, and one of them was out in the garden like picking up balls, and the other one was tossing me balls, and so he just tossed me another ball, and I hit the ball, and it went out to the garden, and the other one looked up, and like right as he looked up, it hit him like square in the forehead, and he went down, and he had like it was great. He had like the lace marks on his forehead. It was turning all purple and blue and black and all that stuff. And then their dad came out, and he was like, "What happened out here?" And I was like, "I'm like sorry, like I hit the ball and it hit Will. Like that's my bad." And then and he was like, he was yelling at his other son who was tossing the balls. He was like, "Why'd you toss him the ball? Why'd you throw him the ball? If you know he's out there picking up balls, blah blah blah." And so that was funny. That was a whole ordeal. And then and then the other best memory I have is when I was on some team, and there was a kid who was he was pitching, and he was pitching for our team, and he just I don't remember what happened in the game, but like he just had an absolute meltdown on the mound, and he was like he was coming set, and he was like sobbing and like could barely see out of his eyes because they were all watery.
Crying on the mound.
And so he just like he threw a pitch, and whatever happened, and he didn't even like get the ball back from the catcher. He just took his glove off, threw it on the mound, and walked right out. And he came into our dugout, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is absolutely insane! I've never seen anything like that before." And so it was certainly awkward, but it was really, really funny too. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, I just love. I don't remember when it happened, but my sort of a family joke is that
Yeah.
I was telling you what to do sometime, and
it probably had to do with getting my elbow up.
And you're like, "Man, stop telling me what to do. You don't know the fundamentals of baseball."
I mean, you were never a baseball player.
I know. Well, it's interesting because I think you didn't have anyone in our family that had any sort of baseball experience or knowledge with dad or uncle or grandfather or whatever, and so it really
sport.
What's that?
I probably picked the least convenient sport for the family.
Yes, and so it's been an interesting ride, but what a amazing ride it's been with all the ups and downs,
and a lot more ups and downs. The ups and downs have not stopped, that's for sure. So
yeah, they never do, right?
Pro ball is is actually more ups and downs than college or high school is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's you get paid for the ups and downs.
Yes. Feels higher risk though, I will say.
Oh, definitely.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and I really appreciated all of your insights and hearing about your experiences, and hopefully we can, hopefully this can be helpful to people so they can know that there's not just one path, and there's not if you're not throwing 95 as a freshman in high school and don't have an offer to a big school at that point, then quit immediately. So
I agree. I think that it's very important for people to hear the other stories about people, in athletics, because the news and the media is always going to cover the guys who are the most exciting or the best in their class and all that stuff, but that's a fraction of a percent of people that are playing and people that are going to go on to play. So I do think it's really important that people hear other stories about the more different and longer ways to find success.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yeah, perfect. All right, thank you so much.
All right. Bye.